Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, this is Nicole Bitar. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you. I'm glad you got everything figured out over there. We can all relate to that. So thank you.
There, I apologize it took so long. We were trying to get two computers up and running. It's not going to work, so we're just going to be here with one and we'll be fine. I apologize about all that. So anyway, we're ready when you're ready. Are we ready to start?
Yes,
Absolutely.
Okay. And you can see our screen fine?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay,
You're good.
awesome. Okay, so we'll start with how often before COVID, and this is how we're feeling right now, a little crazy and a little bit like everything is just falling apart. We felt that way before COVID and a little stressed. And after COVID, and after COVID, it's even felt a little bit worse. And I could tell you, even prior to COVID myself, I felt like my world, I was on the world to self-destruction. I was driving to work one day and everything was just piling in and falling apart. I got pulled over by a police officer and I started to cry. It had nothing about being pulled over. It was just because I couldn't handle one more thing between work and home life and where I was with everything else, some medical things. I literally could not handle one more thing. And that ticket or just being pulled over was the breaking point for me. And I just sat there and sobbed. And the poor guy, I think he was prepared for almost anything else, but somebody who would not stop sobbing. Even after he said he wouldn't give me a ticket, I was like, it's not about the ticket. I can't deal with anything. That ugly cry. And I was at that point past stress, past burnout, to where I really was physically, emotionally, and mentally affected by everything that was going on in my surroundings. And I was no longer taking care of myself. I was taking care of everybody else. And when I would talk to people about it, they would say, you need to learn to relax. You need to do something for yourself. You need to take a break. Well, I didn't even know what that looked like. And telling somebody who is very stressed to relax does not help. So then COVID hit, and I'm going to let Christine talk a little bit more about that because she was impacted a lot by that COVID and her children. So go ahead.
So Nicole and I, and just to give you a little background, Nicole and I met while we were working on our dissertations. And so even though we are two women kind of at different points in our lives, we really bonded and had a lot of similarities. So Nicole has grown children and a granddaughter, but I have small children. And so COVID really brought on some new challenges and new stress for our working lives. And so as an educational professional, I'm just going to say it. When my own small children had to be home and working and doing, my actual professional job online from home while teaching my own children, it was an absolute nightmare. It was a very low point in my life where I felt tremendously shameful because as an educational professional, someone who knows and understands education, that this is my life's work, I found it so incredibly difficult to actually teach my own children. And so when doing some research for this presentation, the American Psychological Association said that almost 8 out of 10 Americans reported that the coronavirus has caused them stress. And so that was a moment for me where I was feeling all of this shame. I was feeling so overwhelmed. I would call Nicole. I would say, I hate teaching my children online. It is a nightmare. I'm trying to do my actual work online. I hate every second of this. I wasn't alone, but I felt very alone at that time.
Having done my dissertation on stress and burnout, I found out that, of course, there were a lot of people who had experienced that same stress and burnout and even some secondary trauma, but there wasn't a lot of answers for them. And especially during this pandemic, we were just surviving. And we had moved from even getting told to do self-care, which we didn't know what that was, to self-preservation.
Okay, and so self-preservation, can you relate to this? And the Merriam-Webster dictionary says it is preservation of oneself from destruction or harm, and it is our natural, instinctive tendency to preserve our own existence. So can any of you feel that way? Because I can certainly say that that is exactly how I felt, particularly in the beginning stages of this pandemic. And so to have someone say to me, you just need to relax. You just need to take a rest. Yeah,
or
that
how,
was.
or how can you be stressed when you're at home?
Well, how can you be stressed when you're at home? Yeah, that was insulting, and I think that a lot of women heard those words, and you know, we were so busy managing our lives that we couldn't tell people to just step back because this is real.
So to go forward, we're going to hit this with a 3-tier approach. The epic of change is here. And so we have the choice as women. Are we just going to continue with our lives, pick them back up, as heavy as that backpack or baggage is, and just keep carrying it? Or are we going to change where we're going with our lives? And I know that Christine and I have made a commitment that we're going to change where we're going forward, even though this morning it felt a little bit stressed. But we are holding each other accountable for that. And we hope that some of you make that same commitment, because we don't want to go back to where we were prior to the pandemic. So we have 3 things we're going to talk about today. We're going to name it. So we hope you learn and understand and get some knowledge about the differences between stress, burnout, and even second trauma, and that you can identify where you are in that spectrum and have some ideas of how that's impacting your life.
And then next, we're going to own it, because this is real. We're going to talk about exactly like what happens in your body when you are experiencing stress and experiencing trauma. And we're going to acknowledge that these are real things that are happening and the feelings are real. So we're going to own it. And when we own it, that's when we're going to talk a bit about hitting the reset button. What do we need to do in that crossroads of change? And then also we're going to look to the work of Collins and talk a bit about a stop doing list. So as women, how often do we have a to-do list that is always kind of on our phones or sitting on our table? Well, we need to talk about a stop doing list at this time. And then we're going to move into the phase where we are definitely going to talk about what we need to do to make intentional change, and we are going to claim it. So we're going to discuss really, what do you need? We're going to talk about understanding the term self-care that, you know, sounds kind of catchy right now, but really, what is self-care? We're also going to discuss the stress cycle and how we can break it, and preparation moving forward, because we have to acknowledge that stress is always going to be there in our lives, but what can we do to manage it?
Sorry, I shared that. So naming it, starting to name it. What is stress? So the National Institute of Mental Health defines stress as the brain's response to a demand. Well, that's not bad. I mean, there's good and bad. And it's a simple response. That not all stress is bad. But what determines if it's bad or not is the intensity and how long that stress stays there. So we all have natural stress in our lives. You know, just waking up in the morning and making your list of what you're doing or not doing or whatever's happening during that day. But when that is very intense, and when that happens for a long period, for a long time, that stress then becomes harmful to us. That stress then can cause harm to our minds and to our bodies.
So the cost of stress. So it is estimated that, you know, stress actually does have a monetary cost associated with it. The U.S. industry says that job stress costs more than $300 billion a year in absenteeism, turnover, diminished productivity, medical and legal insurance costs. And stress costs businesses $125 million to $190 million in additional health-related expenditures for the year. So,
and this is really important because the first time I talked about my dissertation about stress, burnout, and secondary traumatic stress with other people, they said to me, "Oh, those are soft skills. Tell me why it matters to me as a business." Well, it matters because there's actually a cost, a financial cost to districts, to businesses, to all of us, of letting that stress build up. And if you even think back in your own, last year of school, how many days you had to miss because you just couldn't deal with it anymore, or maybe you got sick because your immune system was down because you had too much stress, those type of things. It really is something that has a financial cost on us as a nation. We have a professional quality of life, which is made up of two parts. We have a good part and a bad part, stressful part. The great part is the compassion satisfaction. That's the good stuff that we receive. A lot of us become educators or whatever we do in our life because we get positive feelings from what we do at work. That's that compassion satisfaction. Compassion fatigue is that negative aspect of work. It's a lot of times in helping professions, healthcare, education, anything where we're constantly giving. And this is important to know because that compassion fatigue is made up of two parts: burnout and secondary traumatic stress. A lot of times these get mixed up. You'll hear people use compassion fatigue or burnout together or as the same, or secondary traumatic stress. They are different things. Compassion fatigue is the overall arching term for burnout and secondary traumatic stress. The big difference between these two is that burnout is this hopelessness, feeling of inefficiency, exhaustion, where secondary traumatic stress, it's when you're exposed to a traumatic event. When you're done with burnout, you're feeling worn out, you're feeling exhausted, you're feeling you can't move on. Traumatic stress, you feel afraid. You have this fear feeling. So a lot of times you'll hear people use these words interchangeable. I think we just wanted to make sure we use those right now and defined each of them, because as we move along, and the burnout is caused by this persistent stress, and that builds up and it causes the burnout. Go ahead.
So in understanding job burnout, it is really a stress phenomenon, and it is related to a person's work environment. And so burnout has three dimensions. You feel overwhelmingly exhausted. You have cynicism and a detachment from your actual job. And then also that professional inefficiency, where even though you're working so incredibly hard, or you perceive that you're working so incredibly hard, you just, you have that reduced accomplishment. And so that, and that is really the feeling of having burnout in your workplace.
So that feeling of overwhelming exhaustion, definitely. When you start feeling like, I don't even want this job anymore, forget it. It's not even worth it. Meanwhile, this job was your passion. This was something you care about deeply. And that professional inefficiency, is when you start feeling like, I'm not even making a difference here. I'm trying so hard. I'm not making a difference. And a lot of times that happens in education. When you're working like a low poverty school, or you're working in a high needs school. Sometimes it happens in other fields too, of where you're working in healthcare. But when you start feeling like, why am I even doing this? And one of the big parts of burnout is needing to have control and needing to feel like you're making a difference. And so when we see here that when you start to feel like you don't make a difference, like you're not doing anything, that is huge for burnout. That's a big part of it.
So prior to COVID, so as women, can you ask yourself, did you suffer from stress or burnout? I think that COVID was an opportunity for all of us to, again, hit that reset button and really think about where we are professionally. For those of you out there who have been feeling really satisfied with your profession, that is great. But for some of us, COVID hit and stress and burnout really ramped up. And so again, stress is, characterized by an overengagement, your emotions are overactive, you have that loss of energy, it could be anxiety producing. It might be something that leads to premature health issues that could, be very, very damaging in the long term or prematurely. Whereas burnout, it really is characterized by that disengagement, and you feel that kind of emotional fogginess, and sometimes you feel helpless and hopeless, and you have that loss of motivation. And then for extreme cases as well in burnout, sometimes people do feel like it's just things aren't even worth it any longer. And so this is an opportunity. So we want to use this opportunity, this pandemic, to hit the reset button and improve the quality of our life. And, you know, just anecdotally talking to people were overwhelmingly saying, yes, things were shifted and changed so dramatically that it feels like the right time for people to think and to reevaluate and reassess. And really, again, understanding, am I feeling stressed or am I burned out? Because there are things you can do to help the situation.
And so I'm just going to touch a little bit on this because I'm watching the time, but also COVID has been an ongoing trauma for all of us. And I think that's important for us to understand, because when you go through a trauma, it really changes the chemicals in your brain and it changes our bodies. And so a trauma, I just want to touch base, is 3 E's, they say. It's events, experienced, and effects. So the event would be the pandemic, how each of us experienced it. It was physical, emotional, harmful, or life-threatening. I think many people felt that going through it, and the effects it has on us. Does it leave mental, physical, social, emotional, or spiritual on our well-being? And I think that many of us can say that it affected us in all of those areas or some of those areas. So we can really say that COVID-19 is and or has been a trauma for us, and we've all experienced it in different lenses. So some of us might have a close family member who might have passed due to COVID. Some of us might have been worried about our children or our grandchildren. In my case, some of us might be worried about somebody else, or might have just been, you know, being responsible for a school and making sure that they were safe. So in all different ways. And so we've all been experiencing this different, but it is a trauma that we've dealt with. The next stage is own it. So we now know that what they are: stress, burnout, and trauma. And now it's really saying, where are we? We've identified them. We have to acknowledge ourselves. A lot of times we think as women, or I can't speak for all women, but I could say as a woman, I know that, you know, we think it's an emotion. We think it's in our head. We could just move past this. We have to understand emotions are our bodies telling us when something is wrong, or emotions are telling us how our body feels. And this is not just something that we're thinking. This is something that is chemical. It's neurochemical in our bodies, and our body and our brain is actually acting different under stress. So you'll see the 2 brains here. The one brain is an unstressed brain where the prefrontal cortex is freely sending thoughts and emotions and actions to the rest of our brain. The other brain is under stress. It's the prefrontal cortex is closed off, and it's our amygdala. I knew I was going to say it wrong. Amygdala. It's just throwing all of its emotions everywhere else, and the rest of the brain is shut off. So as we move through, I'm going to go real fast through this. There's 3 parts of the brain that are really affected by the stress. And the reason it's so important is I want you to remember stress, burnout, and trauma actually has physical impacts on our body. So we have the prefrontal cortex. When we're under stress, it is not working. It controls attention, concentration, and focus. We can't do that when we're under extreme stress. We have the hippocampus, which is our learning and memory. Again, doesn't work when we're under extreme stress. And it even changes in how it will react to stress later on if it's under extreme stress for long times. But that emotional regulation for the amygdala, thank you, is so, it's there because from when we were cave people, it was there to protect us through fight, flight, and freeze. So it's always been there. Our body gets so ramped up on cortisone, and the cortisone is in our bodies. And you can go to the next one as I'm speaking of that. You'll see how the cortisone goes all through our bodies. and that it's affecting everything. We're feeling worried if we're under stress. Our heart beats harder. We can't breathe as well. Our major muscles are tightening because we're in what happens is when that cortisol is pumping in our bodies, we're prepared to protect ourselves. It's from when the cavemen were here and we wanted to run and save our lives. We might be being chased by some animal and they had to protect themselves. So that stress cycle starts in our body, and all of our body is affected. It is not just an emotion. So we might be thinking it's an emotion, but you're feeling your heartbeat, your stomach might be getting a little bit sick because cortisone's in there, all of your body's tighter, your skin's feeling things differently, and you're just getting stressed. That, if it keeps going and your body doesn't know that stress cycle, so now you're driving home, you had this horrible day, stress is all over, and you're driving home and you're still feeling all of this in your body. You never tell your body that you got away from that animal, because in the wild, you would have ran and then you would have, oh, thank goodness, I'm safe now. But we never tell our body we're safe. That stress cycle is still going in our bodies. And so we have to find a time or a way to let our bodies know that it's safe and that we can let go of that cortisol and that the rest of our bodies can go ahead and function. So that's why it's really important that we acknowledge that this is something that's happening within our bodies.
Okay. So with all of the information that Nicole has shared about the actual body and physically how we deal with stress, and I think it is also important to mention that stress looks differently in women. And, how often have you heard the story about a woman who goes to her physician and says, I'm feeling a certain kind of way. And the physician maybe doesn't take that woman so seriously because symptoms of major symptoms of something very, very serious, like a heart disease, it looks differently in women than it does for men. So it is time for us at this point to hit the reset button. So we need to, as a community of women, accept and acknowledge that the impact of stress, burnout, and trauma is real. So we are at a crossroads, and this is the time where we can make some intentional choices for some intentional change. So moving on to just talking briefly about the work of Collins and the Stop Doing list. So a Stop Doing list, Collins describes it as a mechanism for disciplined thought about how to allocate our most precious resource, which is time. So we work in schools. And so when you ask teachers, when you ask anyone, what do you need? What can I do for you? Everyone always says time. They always say they need more time to do something. So again, maybe the reason why we feel that we need all this extra time is because we're really putting a lot of professional and personal time on our to-do list into things that maybe should be on our stop doing list. And so let's ask ourselves some questions. So personally or professionally, are these things that are needs or wants? What will happen if I stop? Do these things bring me joy? And then will it have a negative impact? So we ask you to, as an exercise for yourself, to just jot something down. We're not asking anyone at all to get an app or go and meditate or buy something. We're just asking you to sit and think about what are some things in my life that I could stop doing, and it would really bring me some satisfaction and joy and take some things off of my plate.
We had an interactive thing to do with that, but we're going to skip that because
we're running out of time.
Yes. So as far as claiming it, it is important that we understand that what do we need? And so again, at times women tend to, I'm sorry.
No, we have 5
minutes. 5 minutes. Okay. Women tend to maybe know what they need intuitively, but not ask for it. So it's important that we ask for what we need. So what do you need? It's the very first thought that comes to your mind. Think about it. I need support. Sometimes I need support. And I know sometimes Christine just needs a place to vent. So we try to ask for that. But if you want to hit.
Sure.
Yeah.
So again, we had an activity planned with this. So I actually did this in my workplace. So these are real women. These are some real responses. So asking women, what do you need? What is the very, very, very first thought that comes to your mind? And some people had said, I just need some space to breathe. we had other folks that said, you know, hey, I need someone to maybe help me take care of my aging parents. You know, one of my teachers in my building said, I need a chai latte and I need it now. And so, you know, when you look at these responses from real women, none of these responses have anything to do with winning the lottery, or I need a bigger house, or I need $1 million. It's really some things that we need that really can feed our soul and to really help us, you know, take that next step into taking over and taking some control over our stress.
So we talked a little bit about self-care, and like Christina said earlier, self-care is so trendy now, and believe me, people will be really easy to throw out the word, oh, just do some self-care. Take, you know, what is it? It's really about caring for yourself. It's not about, you know, this big trendy word, and it's definitely not something to add to your list. I don't need another thing to add to my list. I don't have time for it. So it's everything you intentionally do for your mental, physical, and emotional well-being. It's taking care of yourself so you can be healthy. It's doing what you need to do. It's doing what you need to do for your job. It's not self-indulgence. We tend to think that it's not being selfish. But it's not another job. It's your care for yourself. And, you know, and as Christine goes to the next one, we saw this really great little picture the other day. It was this little fish swimming. He didn't have a lot of water. Another fish was outside of his bowl, putting all the water in. It's not giving up your oxygen. It's not giving up all your water for somebody else. It's not going down with a plane without any oxygen. You need to put your oxygen mask on first before you can help anybody else. That's taking care of yourself. That's self-care. And right now, when it's self-preservation, we can't even do that. We need to make sure we're giving ourselves oxygen. We're giving ourselves as much care as we can. Then we can worry about others. And that's not selfish. That's just taking care of ourselves.
Sure. So breaking the stress cycle. So we have gotten this information from the book, Burnout, The Secret to Unlocking the Cycle of Stress. It's an excellent book. There are 3 major points that are made in the book. And that to break the stress cycle, first of all, you need to move. You need to physically move your body. So we are not talking about joining some class or buying a Peloton. This could be as simple as, if you're working in a school building, maybe you get up from your desk and you take a walk around the building and you physically move, or you take the stairs instead of the elevator. So physically moving your body helps to alleviate that cortisol and get you back on track.
It tells your body you're safe. It tells your body, okay, that's over. I'm safe.
So the next thing is hug it out for 20 seconds. And so in the book, they talk about actually hugging a person, and that 20 seconds is really key, because that is the point where you feel just ever so slightly uncomfortable, and that immediately breaks the stress cycle. So knowing that right now we're trying to be very mindful of not being in each other's personal space, you know, if you can't hug someone, then, you know, hug a pillow, squeeze your muscles, tension for 20 seconds and let go and release. And that will help break that stress cycle. And then finally, sleep and rest. I think that here in our country in particular, this idea of sleep, people think like when you sleep, you're somehow being lazy. And that is not the case at all. Sleep is restorative. It helps your body function properly. And people really need to prioritize their sleep. And so if you have trouble saying that, I can't get as much sleep as I need, focus on rest. Resting your body, resting your mind will help to break that stress cycle.
And I think we're out of time. I think the big thing here is intentionally change can start today. And I'll allow myself to say no. I'll protect and respect my time. And I'll speak until I'm heard. A lot of times we just speak and we're not heard, and that's making ourselves feel inefficient again, making ourselves feel like we're not worthy or like we're doing something for nothing. So I think if we can do those intentional changes that start today, that's a really great starting point. Mm-hmm. We do have some other slides, but I think this is an okay place to stop for us. Mm-hmm. And I think that this will all be released. We do have our emails that we can give out, and we can, anybody has any questions or needs information, we have tons of other resources we'd be more than glad to share. I know we gave you a lot of information in a little bit of time, but there's so much out there, and we really think it's important for us to take this opportunity in time right now and decide that we're not going back to how it was, but we're going to be better. And we're going to be better because we're going to make ourselves better by not feeling like we have to take on everything, and that it's okay for us to do that. And we want to give you that permission. Anybody out there, we're giving you the permission to say no. We're giving you the permission to understand that this is chemical in your body. It's too much to take on too much. And it's not lazy to say, I need a half an hour to de-stress. I need this. And you'll be a better mother, a better professional. You'll be better everywhere. So we could take questions. I know it's the last one of the day. Maybe people are done, but we would be really happy to answer anything. Or like I said, our email is on the last slide. We'd be more than glad to give that too.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment, and I just want to say I really appreciate this presentation. Personally, I struggled a lot during our COVID experience. I had a 15-month-old at the time. I was pregnant, had a baby in the pandemic. And then I think, like, as we transition back into the building, again, not knowing what will occur, because as we hear in the news, things are kind of spiking with the different variants. But I think as a community of people who have all experienced the same thing, but with a different lens, I should say, I think we'll be more prepared and understand that the things that you were mentioning are very necessary. Like, I will not think twice about getting up and taking a walk.
Right.
Exactly. Just something so simple. I think that, people just make it. Well, first of all, I just want to say, like, good for you, Mom, with the baby and working and everything. I mean, that's awesome. And again, as a community of women, I don't know about you, but I cannot keep up with some of these Pinterest moms out there who post all this stuff, make it look like it's easy, and it is really not. Like, we are all, like, doing the best we possibly can. And so as a community of women, we need to support each other. So so little simple things: get up, take a walk, just those, again, take the stairs, park a
Stretch.
little, stretch, park a little farther away.
Grey's Anatomy, dance it out.
Dance it out.
Dance
Exactly.
Just let your body know that it is okay. You're
Yeah.
safe. You're fine. And because that cortisol is still rushing, you're still in stress mode. You go in and your kids have one little outbreak, and you're like,
Yep.
it just, you need to let your body know it's okay. Our bodies are wired for a long time ago. We don't live like that anymore.
Yeah.
But kudos to you for doing what you're doing, honestly. And we support you and cheer for you, because we have to for each other. That's the only way it works.
Yeah. Thank you for your comments.
For sharing. Yeah. And thanks for attending today. Really reach out to us if you have any questions, or even if you just need a friend to say great job, because we're here.
Thank you so much, ladies.
No, thank you. Anybody else?
Anyone else? Any additional comments or questions? Again, we're not medical doctors. We are educational people, but I think above all, we're women and moms and daughters and friends and grandma and colleagues, and this has been really hard. Every person. So when I say speak until I'm heard, every person that I can tell, I've been saying this pandemic was really a women's pandemic. This affected women in ways that I think it's going to be hard for us to kind of move forward. I mean, how many women have lost their jobs? How many women had intentionally made some choices to stay home for childcare reasons? And so, as a community of women, it's important that we all respect each other's choices and support each other. And honestly, give your, find that accountability partner. Nicole's my accountability partner. And, sometimes I just need her to say to me, it's okay, you can say no. And that is just such a blessing and a gift to be able to have someone who cares about me to say, I give you permission to say no. You don't have to do that. You don't have to go to that event. You don't have to. And, like I was telling her, I sent my kids to summer camp yesterday. My little one went with no underwear on. Like, what? I mean, this is life, right? This is life.
And I'm always like, that's okay.
And she said to me, and I was like totally mortified and embarrassed, which nobody knew. But as a mom, I felt such guilt and shame, because I thought, oh my God, I sent my kid to summer camp not prepared. And she said to me, oh, don't worry about it. It's fine. So she essentially gave me permission to
Yeah.
just let go of some of that guilt. And again, it's just such a gift
Yeah,
and blessing.
find somebody, and if you can't, text one of us or email us. We're good at that. But I think maybe because I'm older, really older, and I've been past it, and I've just kind of realized my life has gone on, and with or without underwear, right? But it's okay. And it's funny because when Christine and I first started doing, and I don't want to keep anybody, if you have to go, we're not going to be hurt. But when we first started doing our dissertation together, I called Christine and she was hiding in the back of her cupboard. And I would be like, why are you hiding in your cupboard? It's the only place I can get silence. We were working during the pandemic. Well, I started having my parent organization groups and and I had like multiple parents hiding in their cupboards because it's the only place, multiple women, it's the only place they could get any quiet to talk as a group. And we shouldn't have to be hiding in our cupboards to get 2 seconds, right? And so that is where we are. Like, we need to help each other get out of the cupboard, or at least close the door so we have some privacy.
Yes.
And support each other, that it's okay,
It is
and I
okay.
think that's help each other, help yourself, but don't give up your oxygen while you're helping other people. Protect yourself. It's okay.
It's okay. So thank you so much for your kind attention today, everyone.
Yeah.
Really, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to just talk and have some dialogue around this important topic.
Yeah, I feel bad we didn't get to talk more. We just presented, and we had so much more we wanted to talk about. It's just we started late and we just had so much.
So thank you.
Yes. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll say thank you.